Very intense. Anything specific?
They were calm and collected the whole time.
Okay.
Focus.
Froning especially, right? I'll tell you, honestly, like when I first started with CrossFit and sort of figuring everything out on my own, I probably watched hours of events like that, from games, from regionals, the whole 9 yards. And when I first started, it was more out of a sheer awe of what these athletes are capable of. And then after a while, I came to the point where I started watching them for almost like football players study film. Starting to see how they break up reps, how they rest, how they transition from event to event, different things like that. And it came to the point, now it's to the point where when I watch these videos, I don't necessarily, I mean, I see all of the things that we talked about, the calm, how they break stuff up, but more or less, what these videos represent to me now is what the human body is capable of. So, I don't look at these athletes as, something that I'm never going to achieve, or, something I may or may not achieve for that matter, but for me, it's that tells me that I am still capable of playing, okay? So I'm going to leave you guys with that for a second, and then we're going to segue into the throwing the mechanism and mentally preparing for the open, okay? So with this, as I was putting this together over the last few days, I can kind of tell you that we're going to talk about some things with the open, but you guys are going to kind of see that it doesn't necessarily just apply to the open. It's going to apply to every single time that you're in this place, putting forth the effort and working out. Okay, so kind of take away from that. I won't start talking about the open until the very end of it, so I'm going to bore you guys for the first, probably for the majority of the next 30 minutes with the first 2 slides of this, and we're going to kind of go from there, okay, and start talking about things to expect for this year with the open. So today we're going to talk about goal setting and how to accomplish that, prioritizing focus, and then we'll get into, like I said, what is the open, the RX versus scales, as some of you guys have heard us talking about lately, and then lastly, some closing motivation before we kick off today's workout. So the first thing, goal setting. So life versus fitness. When we think about setting goals, we set goals for life, we think pretty much one of 2 things. Either the goals are survival-based or, I guess, happiness-based, if you will. So survival-based being, I know that I need to make a certain amount of money to pay my bills. Let's see, what was another great example of that? I'm sure you guys are thinking more, I'm kind of drawing a blank right now. But then you talk about setting goals for fitness, and how do we do that? How do we accomplish that? You talk about, are we measuring our fitness by how much we weigh on the scale, or how fast we can run a mile, or how fast we can come in here and do one of the benchmark workouts? There's a ton of different ways to kind of measure that and set goals for fitness. I don't really think that setting our goals for, some of the things I talked about with the, how much do we weigh on the scale, how representative is that of our fitness? I've had a couple of conversations with different people over the last few months about it really doesn't matter what you look like, to be honest. And it's not going to be a measure of how fit you are or what your body is actually capable of doing. So when we start getting into this and I start talking about some of these things, it's going to relate back to that and how I view fitness now is not, the ability to throw out massive amounts of weight necessarily, how much I weigh. My wife can attest that we haven't had a battery in our scale at home for the better part of 6 months now, and you can ask her about that, but I'm not going to tell her what I won't reveal what I have written on the scale at home for that specific reason, okay? But when we start talking about this fitness and analyzing workouts and everything, it's gonna come back to how we establish our goals for fitness and how that relates to everything, okay? So, the first thing that we wanna think about when we're setting goals for ourselves is analyzing the workouts. So regardless of, whether we're coming in here on a daily basis and doing like a 5K row or whatever else Tyrell has programmed, or we're coming in here and we're doing an open style workout, next Friday night, you have to have the ability to analyze that workout and understand the different pieces of that workout. And how do we do that? So, some of us in here maybe record our workout. How many of us in here record our workouts after we're done? Sometimes, maybe, I can tell you I'm probably the first person for that. I used to, and I haven't been for like the last couple months. But analyzing your workouts and recording your workouts is a huge piece to being able to understand the workouts and how you're going to break them down later. For me personally, the reason why I don't record a lot of my workouts is because I've done so many different workouts. I have a very good gauge of where my body sits. So I know that if I come in and we're going to row a 10 by 250 with like 30 seconds rest, I can tell you exactly what each one of my times is going to be for each one of those 250s before I get on the machine. Okay, so that's what we're building up to. And if you're not one of those types of people that's not good with remembering numbers, then I highly recommend that you start recording your workouts. So you have something to go back to look at and reference. And you're like, hey, those movements look familiar. How did I break this up last time? What did my times look like? So you can kind of start to compare and contrast what's being programmed and what you've done in the past. Okay? Huge piece to understanding how things are going to play out when those workouts drop, especially during the open. Okay? The next piece of this, small attainable goals. We look back at that video that we just watched this morning. How many of those athletes went unbroken for any of those specific movements? 0, right? So we look back at that and we think small attainable goals. We have to look at the workouts and not think, oh my gosh, there is 50 double unders and then 40 handstand push. Like, how am I going to do 40 handstand push-ups? For me, when I hear 40, I'm like, okay, that's 8 sets of 5 for me. Okay, that's the mentality that you have to get into when we're looking at these workouts. And especially, I guarantee you there's going to be another big chipper workout this year. There always is. There has been for the last, every year they've done the open. You see that workout drop, don't think, oh my gosh, 150 wall balls. I have pieces over there probably smiling because she hates wall balls. How are you going to break that up? You have to put it in small, manageable numbers that you know that you're capable of doing. You can't just sit there and be like, and just stress out about it because it's going to eat you away. You're like, oh my gosh, 20 muscle-ups? I can't do 20 muscle-ups. You've done it before in other workouts, maybe either on the minute or strung together over the course of 30 minutes. You're capable of doing it. You just have to take a step back and realize it. Okay? So that's the thing with the small attainable rules. The 80-80 rule. This is something I stumbled upon last year, shortly after the open, and I wish I would have had the chance to, put this into play. But this has become a regular practice for me, and anybody that's worked out next to me or done interval work next to me will attest to this, and it probably drives them insane. But the 80-80 rule is for 80% of your Metcon or your workout, you go at 80% pace. Okay? And then that final 20% is your red line all out. So for me, when I think of this, if the way to kind of go about this and what your body should feel like is for that first, say it's a 10-minute AMRAP, 10-minute Metcon, so that's going to take you 10 minutes. For those first 2 minutes, it should be like almost like a warm-up for you. You should barely be breathing. You probably shouldn't even break a sweat during those first 2 minutes. And then as time progresses and you get closer to that 8-minute mark, if it's that 10-minute workout, then that's when you turn on and you floor it and start trying to go as fast as humanly possible, or as fast as you're humanly capable. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. The 80-80 rule, like I said, it doesn't just apply to the open. It applies to pretty much every Metcon that you can do. Because if you think about it, if I come out here and I try and, you saw Dan Bailey do it with the toes to bar, string together a 31 straight toes to bar, and then how long did it take him to do the last 9 of that workout? Okay, the same concept applies. You can't go all out and then expect to still finish at that same pace, That I think the way they kind of CrossFit has named the workout, the AMRAP, as many rounds as possible, or as many reps as possible, it's kind of deceiving to people because everybody's like, all right, I gotta get as many as I possibly can in the next 5 minutes, so I'm gonna go as hard as I can right off the bat. And it usually ends up backfiring very, very quickly, especially those of you that are, everybody here is nodding their head because they probably experienced that early in their CrossFit journey. So, and I think everybody's on the same page with that. So just keep that in mind. Next, leaderboarding. This one applies specifically to the open. Okay, who in here has who has done the open in previous years? How many of us during the open, between the course of Thursday and Tuesday night, have refreshed the computer screen more than 3 times to see how much third place is dropped? Okay, we call that leaderboarding. All right, it is a very negative approach to the open, and if you really want to start to feel bad about yourself and feel sorry for yourself, by all means, go for it and do it, but I highly recommend that you don't. Okay. A couple reasons for that. I can think of a workout I did last year. We did the whole Friday Night Lights thing. Very first workout, open workout, 14-1, snatches and double unders. And I went and I submitted my score right away and it got approved that night. And I was like, yes, I'm sitting 18th, going to regionals. By Sunday, I was like 120. Monday night, I was probably sitting around like 180, 190. And then by Tuesday night, when all the affiliates had finally validated their scores, I was probably like 260 or 270. So it goes very, very quickly. You start to see your name further and further and further down that list. It can have a very traumatic effect, especially if you have really high expectations of yourself. So, I mean, by all means, check the leaderboard if you want. At the same time, though, I mean, it's bragging rights, but it's really not going to get you anywhere checking the thing every 5 minutes for the entire weekend and refreshing your phone. Repeat workouts with the open. This is kind of a touchy subject with some people because a lot of us are, pretty much everybody sitting here is competitive in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. Whether that's, with your workouts or whatever part of life, there's something that draws you in here that makes you want to be a better person, a better athlete, a better mom, dad, grandfather, grandmother, whatever the case is. You're in here because you're a competitive person. So it's very natural for us to want to come in here and try our hardest, say Friday night, and we don't meet our expectations, and then come back in here Monday morning like, I got to do that workout again because I know I can do better the second time around. The problem with that is we start setting ourselves up for failure and start setting ourselves up for, I guess, the wrong mindset that kind of detracts from the open. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But with the repeat workouts, we have to remember the intent behind the open. One of those reasons is to find the fittest athletes for those next stages of competition. I think the open stands for a lot more than that, but remember that that's the basis of this whole process, is to find those athletes. If you're not one of those athletes that's vying for, now it's one of those top 20 spots in the region, I don't really see a reason to do it. You're just going to stress yourself out more. You're going to put higher expectations on yourself, and if you don't meet those expectations, it's going to draw down that motivation for future workouts and, maybe create a dislike for, CrossFit or working out in general. So kind of keep that in mind as they come around. I have the magic number written up there because I did some quick number crunching this morning, looking from past when they opened last year, pretty much across all regions, both male and female. The magic number refers to the average number of points that 20th place person had after those 5 workouts were done. So keeping in mind, we want to repeat workouts. That magic number for men is usually, based on my homework this morning, was between 230 and 270. So accumulation over those 5 workouts they placed in a total added score of 230 to 270 points. For women, that score was 180 to 210. So a little bit more competitive. I think part of that being with some of those higher end, more technically skilled workouts, like with the muscle ups, a lot of those women have a tendency to separate themselves from the pack a little bit more. So if you're going to repeat a workout, you should probably be chasing that magic number. But for me, like I had this grand illusion that I was going to qualify for regionals after doing CrossFit for 4 months last year. And after that first workout, I'm sitting at 260. I was like, okay, there's really not a need for me to videotape any more of these workouts because it's not going to happen. So kind of keep that in mind. If you come in here and you're sitting at 190 after that first workout, maybe try and redo that first one, and then after that, if it doesn't get any better, then maybe start considering, where you're sitting for this year's Open. Okay, so something to keep in mind. I know we have athletes in here that are definitely capable of that, but I think we can have a tendency to get in over our head with that a little bit. Moving on, prioritizing focus. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story for this one, and I'm sure my wife is going to crack it because I have a feeling she knows exactly what I'm talking about with this one. Being in the military previously, and in the infantry, it requires a very, very broad skill range to do the job that I used to do. It's a lot more than what we see on TV or we see in the movies. And often, the debate was, in the infantry community specifically, is what makes a good Marine. A lot of people it's kind of a two-sided debate. One side of it being, hey, is he disciplined? Does he wear his uniform well? Does he get his hair cut on a regular basis? Does he come in with a shave every morning? Does he know his customs and courtesies and the whole 9 yards? And then on the other end of that spectrum is the infantry community. Does any of that stuff really affect how well I shoot a rifle, or how effective I am at clearing a room or kicking indoors? So you get this two-sided debate, and it's really funny, especially when you start getting into the higher ranks and start talking to some of those people, because you get some people that are very one-sided in that debate. So Tyler's story, I will tell his. This kid was pardon my language, the biggest pain in my ass for the better part of 18 months.
Didn't know you felt that.
Not this time. I promise. No resemblance whatsoever. This kid had so many issues going on. A binge alcoholic on the weekends for sure. Multiple instances of that. Chain smoked like a chimney, and if he wasn't smoking, he was probably, dipping at that point. All sorts of issues with his girlfriend, who later became his fiance, who later became his ex-wife, and this kid was a mess. Like every weekend was something different with this kid, and it got to the point where I wanted to get rid of this kid so bad. I tried multiple avenues and approaches, and constantly in trouble with one thing or another. But if you gave this kid a radio and a rifle in a combat situation, this kid probably, if he would have found himself in Afghanistan or Iraq in previous years, probably would have walked away with multiple dollar awards, because he was that good at what he did outside of all the distractions that he had going on elsewhere in his life. And I say that because that type of thinking and mentality applies to what we do in here every single day. Okay? We start talking about mental clarity in here, at the box, at the affiliate, when you're working out. Okay? How easily do you get distracted? Are you a type of person who can come in here and work out and just be focused on the task at hand and just get things done? Or do you have to like go put the barbell in the bathroom, the air gun in the bathroom, and shut the door and close it and work out by yourself so that you don't get distracted? I know nobody does that, but
We're gonna have to get a bigger bathroom.
But that's the mindset. So we're going to talk about prioritizing each of these things in here and how to focus on them. The first one being the barbell. Not necessarily the barbell, but maybe it's the rings, maybe it's the bar over here. Whatever movement it is, that needs to be your main focus, period. You need to learn, and some people are better than others. Some people, it comes naturally, some people need to work on it a little bit, but we're all at that different level. But you need to be able to focus on whatever that technique is, whatever that lift is, at that given moment. And that needs to be your zone, your focus, and make it your own. Okay? Why is that so important? We start talking about judging and coaching and music. Those are all other factors that come in as distractions. How easily are you able to focus on what you're doing, but still listen to that judge out of the corner of your ear when he says no rep? Do you know why? Or are you so zoned out that you have no idea why and he just keeps saying no rep, no rep, no rep, no rep? Chances are, if you don't know why you got no rep right off the bat, then you're probably not focused on what you're doing. Okay? So keep that in mind. I'll talk about coaching for a minute. How many of us like to have coaching being done while we're working out? It's kind of a customary thing in here, is it not? Hey, fix this, hey, fix that. When it comes time to competition, I'm a very firm believer that when you're competing, that if you need coaching when you're competing, then either one, you have no idea what you're doing, or two, your coaches probably failed you in your preparation for whatever it is you're doing. You start looking at some of the big names like John Wooden, Bill Bowerman, some of the bigger NFL coaches right now, and are they reserved on the sidelines? Were they reserved people during competition? Or were they the ones that were sitting there screaming up and down, making a fool of themselves when things are going on because they want to get their players' attention to do something that they really want to do? Which technique is more effective? Like I said, if you require that extra coaching button and that's new, that's fine. Maybe you're not to that point yet. But keep that in mind, if you're relying on somebody to tell you how to do something, especially during these open workouts, then we probably haven't prepared you enough for what you're about to undertake. Okay? So kind of keep that in mind with your mental focus as it goes on. I talk about music because everybody has their own personal preference when it comes to music. I know I typically do when I'm working out, but I know Tyro's been in here a couple times where he's asked me, hey, what do you want me to throw on real quick? Because we're doing Isabella. Okay, so you want to do Isabella. Hey, throw this on. As soon as that timer starts, I couldn't tell you the song was playing for that given time because I'm so zoned out on what's going on that, and then I get done, I'm like, oh yeah, hey, there's music playing, sweet, awesome. Funny story, I had a buddy of mine that competed at the SoCal Regionals last year, and day 3 on Sunday, everybody's done, all the team members are having drinks, and we're standing there watching the men's individual competition wrap up, and he's like, were they playing music this weekend when we were working out? Yeah, dude, where have you been the whole time? Man, I must have been zoned out. I have no idea what's going on. So, we talk about getting in the zone, and is that music, I mean, is it really affecting your performance, or are we so focused on what we're doing that it doesn't even matter at that point? Talking about other distractions. If you come in here and does it that's because parental instincts kick in right away, and you're like, oh, I have to go attend to that because it's more important than what's on the ground in front of me right now. Okay, my daughters are typically well behaved when they're in here, and it's not really a big deal for me when they're in here because I know that they're not in danger, they're not gonna do anything crazy. But if I'm at home in my garage working out, and they come and they open the garage, I might as well stop whatever I'm doing and get out their bikes and toys and balls and whatever they want, because I know if I don't, they're not gonna leave me alone until I do. So kind of two different settings with that. But what else distracts you when you're in here? Are you a social person, and do you let conversations with other people distract you with what's going on, or are you concerned with what they're talking about, so on and so forth? You have to find ways to block those things out when you're in here, not just during open workouts, but just in general as it is. I think you'll find that you'll, one, not only have a better workout, but it'll make you more focused in the long run. So kind of keep that in mind, and prioritizing that focus is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the case is. You know, going back to the barbell for a minute, something that I want to kind of talk about with that is when we're so focused on what we're doing, a lot of times it's easy to get down on ourselves when we can't get that one rep. When we're sitting there and we're staring at those rings or that pull-up bar, or we're doing burpees. Burpees is an awesome example of when we want to take breaks during workouts and just sort of like breathe with our hands on our knees. We have to have a routine. I can't remember which CrossFit athlete that said it. I want to say it's Josh Bridges. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he talks about that barbell. If you walk away from that barbell or those rings, they've already beaten you. So if you decide that you want to set the bar down, whatever the case is, and go chalk your hands, you need to have a set routine when you do it. If it's 2 seconds to walk to the bucket, chalk my hands, 3 seconds to walk back, and I'm back up on those rings. I'm not going to sit there and stare at them for the 15 seconds, because every time, the longer I sit there, the more it's going to be me mentally, and the more I'm going to question whether or not I can do it over again. Okay, so it's fine to not go unbroken, but have a routine in what you do when you come back to that bar, or when you come back to those rings, or whatever the case is, whatever the movement is. Have a routine. If you're going to split that up, have a routine, come back to it, and make that the same every single time. You'll see me a lot of times at the bar, I will just simply take a step back, because I don't want to give myself the impression that if I turn around, I'm being beaten, and I'm walking with my tail between my legs. If I turn around, I walk away from the bar. Okay? So keep that in mind when we start getting into these higher rep situations. Build a routine, stick to it every single time. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever the case is. And, any questions? Yeah. None? Good. Okay. So, what is the...
I think just so you know, I have about 7 minutes on here, but if we run out of time and we miss something, that's just so you know.
Okay. You can probably, if you want it, you can cut it, because everything else is just going to be open specific.
Okay.
So what is it open to us, other than the first phase in finding the fittest athletes in the world?
It's community, fun, enjoy it.
Others? Everybody's like, yeah, great answer. That sounds good. I
That
like
was
it.
about getting out of my comfort zone.
Getting out of our comfort zone.
A good motivation to push yourself further than you've probably been.
Yeah, you don't have the luxury of having Tyrell program something for you that you know that you're capable of. For me, it's definitely a test, but I think sometimes people get so wrapped up in this open concept, and oh my gosh, Dave Castro gets to play God for 30 seconds when he announces this workout every Thursday night. If you don't know who Dave Castro is, you will this year, I promise, when you watch the clips. You'll get to watch him play God for that 30-second roll, and then everybody's freaking out because there's these 2 fit elite athletes, and oh my gosh, they're struggling through this workout. How am I ever going to do this thing? And it's a rolling stress ball until that next night when you get to do it yourself, and you watch how much they were in pain, how much they struggled. But really, when we think about this, so the workout drops on Thursday, relatively early on Thursday. I think it's like 5 or 6 o'clock. How is that any different than
9 o'clock every night, and I know every single one of you is sitting refreshing your phone to find out what the workout is the next morning in here. I know because I've done it, and it takes like 5 minutes for it to refresh. That tells me that everybody's probably on the server. Okay, it's not any different than those types of workouts. Than anything that we do in here on any given day of the week. So you have to have that mentality when you go into the open. Hey, yeah, a workout's going to drop tonight, and it's not any different than what we would be typically seeing here on a regular basis. Okay. If you're concerned about what the workouts are going to be, it doesn't really apply to the newer folks that this is their first open. I know there's a few of them here. But if you've been doing CrossFit for a year, 2, 3, 4 years, and this is not your first open, if you're worried about what those workouts are going to be, you haven't done enough preparation for it this year. Okay, so keep that in mind. If, probably a little bit late to be saying that before with the open being 5 days out now, but keep that in mind over the next year. If you're still down and you stay healthy and we're doing this, hey, are we doing enough this year to make sure that we're ready for the open this year right now in this moment? Okay. So the big thing with this year's open is the RX and scale divisions. So this is a lot of new things they're going to have. Not in addition to the open and the masters divisions, they're also going to have a team division. So that's going to be kind of interesting to watch. They are also going to be crowning state champions and province champions in Canada this year. So that'll be really interesting to see where you can get on that leaderboard and not only figure out where you place in the North Central or worldwide, or whatever the case is, but you can actually look up South Dakota and see where you place in South Dakota. And it was really funny because when Dave Castro was talking about adding the state concept to this, he actually says in the video, I can go in and I can see the fittest athlete in South Dakota, and I just smiled when he said it because that was actually really funny. I don't know who else saw that, but it was hysterical. I was like, hey, he said it. South Dakota, there it is. So we have the open team masters. With the RX and scales, you're going to have 2 options for workouts. So you're going to have the regular workout that drops, and you're going to see the athletes do on that Thursday night, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to see a scaled down version of that workout to allow more people to come in and do these workouts. Okay. Why is this important? Because of ranking. We start looking at these. We have that RX division, that prescribed division, whatever that workout is. If you have 1 rep in that prescribed workout, you will be ahead of somebody who has 500 reps in the scaled division. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you're thinking about, hey, maybe I don't really want to, I kind of just want to do the scaled workouts, it's going to drop you a lot further if you're worried about where you're going to place. If you're not just in your, you want to compete as best as possible. That 1 rep, whether it's a total bar or muscle up, whatever the case is going to be more than somebody who does, like I said, 500 or whatever the other movements are.
So do you know if the scaled ones will have a prescribed movement? Like if it's not toes to bar, the scaled is knee to elbow, will it be?
Yep, next slide.
Okay.
I did a little bit more for that one too. And then the no reps on that, obviously, you can come in. In the past, people will be like, there's no way I'm going to get a total bar, I'm not even going to try it. So they won't even submit a score, and you're going to see them drop all the way down to the very bottom because they don't have any score submitted whatsoever. But if you come in and you actually put in a 0 because you attempted the workout and you couldn't get any reps, then you're still going to be higher than those people that didn't score that well. So keep that in mind. Also, with the RX and scale, for the people that are competing, I know probably Bitsy has the best chance of anybody to make it to the next level, just being honest. With those RX and scaled workouts, if at any point in time you say you've done the first 3 workouts at the prescribed as RX, and you decide to do number 4 at the scale, you're automatically out of the running for whatever that next level is. So kind of keep that in mind with that. Don't let the idea of the prescribed stuff get in the way of your goals for the scale stuff. So the big question is, what are we going to see for RX versus scale? All of these figures over the next 3 slides that you're going to see are all examples from the team series that occurred this fall. Okay, so the biggest takeaway from this is we're looking at these, and Castro talked about it in a previous interview, that they used all that team series to kind of figure out how they wanted to orient this scale stuff. So if we look at this, typical wall balls, everybody's quite familiar with it, 20 pounds for guys, 14 pounds for women, 10-foot target that they used for that team series. For this scale division, it was 14 and 10 with a 9-foot target. So a little bit lighter weight, a little bit shorter target. Double unders and single unders, another example. Typically when we hear single unders or we scale back to double unders, it's a 3-to-1 ratio. In the 3 workouts that they had that had double unders in them, they either went to a 2-to-1 ratio of single unders, so 60-30 was the one example I found, or it was a 1-to-1 ratio where it was 100 double unders and then 100 single unders for that scale division. So the single unders will definitely be in play, so I know that's the one thing that people always stress out about the most for whatever reason. Muscle ups, chest to bar pull-ups was the scaled version for that. And then for chest to bar pull-ups, they had just your regular chin over the bar pull-ups, no requirement to touch the chest on those. And then interestingly enough, it's the first time they've had handstand push-ups program for the RX division. And for the scale, they actually did a push press at a lighter weight. So I found that kind of interesting. That's probably the coolest one out of all those, that they actually attempted to scale back. Talking about weights, these weights right here, this was the ladder weights that they used for the snatch ladder during that team series. So it was a lot of reps. I think it was 20 reps at each of those weights until they got to the last one. It was the max reps in the remainder of time. But keep in mind that it was 2 people doing it. It wasn't just one. So that's a lot of reps, especially with the snatch at those heavy weights. But we can kind of see how I think everybody that's done the tribe stuff before is familiar with that. 135, 195, 155, 105, 185, 125, so on and so forth, all the way down the line. So you kind of see how those play out. For the scale division, we're going to see that these weights are going to be scaled back a little bit, but they're not drastic changes. To me personally, that's not something I would worry about. The weights are going to be what they're going to be. And if you come in here and you say, hey, I'm not really comfortable with that, I still want to do the workout, then we can scale back more. Just keep in mind that if you don't meet the scale or the prescribed weight, then we can't put it in the school for you. So I would rather you guys come in here and attempt it with as best form as possible than see you guys completely let it go by the wayside and let everything go that you've worked for the last 6 months to a year, or if not longer. Okay, so just a general idea of what those weights will look like. Movements that were not scaled. Rowing, all variations of burpees that they had, toes to bar, and the barbell movements. I put a star next to barbell movements because obviously the weights are going to change, but there's not going to be anything substituted for, say, a front squat. A front squat is still going to be a front squat. An overhead squat is still going to be an overhead squat. Cleans and snatches are still cleans and snatches. There's nothing from the hang, nothing. It's all from the ground to overhead or whatever the case is. So those are the ones that I could find that were everybody did regardless. The burpees included your over the bar burpees as well as burpee box jumps, which will be my one guess as the new addition to this year's open. So I think that's the one that we'll see that we haven't seen yet. But I haven't been right yet, so don't listen to me. Any questions? None? Everybody good? Everybody said, oh, I don't know if I want to work out now. This is... Okay, well, I kind of figured that would be the case, and I went a little bit over the time that I was allotted. I'm going to blame the fact that we got a late start on it. But this is what I'm going to leave you guys with. Kind of the background with some of the things that I used to do in the military. We did a lot of what we call tie-ins. So this is an example of one of those, and we'll see. This is probably one of my favorite ones. So I'll let you guys kind of guess. Let's pretend that we have an imaginary account, an imaginary bank that over the course, every every day, they are gonna give you $86,400. Okay, every single day. The only catch to that is that at the end of that day, whatever you don't spend and whatever you don't use goes back to zero, and the next day it starts back over and you get a fresh $86,400. We all good with that?
Oh yeah.
Who likes that idea? How would we use that money?
Spend as much of it as we could.
Spend everything.
What will we do with that money? I always like to ask, because I'm always interested to see what people have to say and how creative they get these answers.
Build my dream home.
You know?
Build a dream home for everybody in my family.
Yeah. What else? How do we feel about the $840? So of that $86,400, how would you feel about spending $840? Would it be that big of a deal to you guys? Probably not. It's like chump change at that point, right? It's really not much. I mean, it is, to me, if I had $840, I'd be like, oh yeah. But of that $86,400, $840 wouldn't seem like a whole lot in a larger perspective, right? Okay. What if I told you that 86,400 is also the number of seconds in a 24-hour day? How would you spend that now? The better part of this is the fact that I wrote program today's workout. I actually wrote this before I wrote program today's workout, and I laughed when they told me what it was. Because 840 is also the number of seconds in 14.4, which was the longest AMRAP last year in video game. Kind of puts it all in perspective now, doesn't it? So, hopefully that gets everybody a little bit fired up this morning. But, the last thing I'll leave you with, I found this when I was searching for pictures yesterday. But for those of us that are still questioning our ability, or whether or not we want to do this, or why we're even here in the first place, dead last is greater than did not finish, which trumps did not start. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this morning's talk on preparing for the open.